Hello and welcome to the Climbing Daily Friday Gear Show. Today we're going to be looking at outdoor bouldering, the kit involved and a few tips to get you started. Now currently all around the world climbing gyms are on lockdown or shut for the time being, and that means that it's a perfect opportunity, if your country's regulations allow it, to try outdoor bouldering. It's quite a difficult transition from indoor climbing to outdoor climbing, and there are a few pitfalls you need to avoid. So today we're going to be looking at that transition. Now, a lot of the regulations around the world are saying that you can go climbing, but you need to have your own kit, so no sharing of certain items. And that means it's a great opportunity to pick up some gear, especially if you're just starting out. Having your own set of brushes and chalk and shoes and bouldering pads mean you reduce the risk of spreading the coronavirus and you build up your collection. So it's a bit of a win-win. Here in France, we're just out of lockdown, and that means that we have to wear masks in public places and adhere to strict social distancing rules. So with that in mind, we headed to our local bouldering area. We were very excited to get outside and climb, but it was a damp day, so we had to dodge those soggy patches. Okay, before we get into the tips, let's go through some essential gear. First of all, the walk-in will probably be more muddy than to your local climbing wall, and having dry feet before you climb is important. Approach shoes are like overbuilt trainers or slimmed-down hiking boots. They've got rubber soles for grip and a hard-wearing outer layer. These are my Arc'teryx Conceal shoes. Bouldering pads protect the falling climber from the ground. We have a whole selection on the EpicTV shop, from monster big to small and compact. We recommend going for a mid-size one to start off, like this from Black Diamond. Keeping dry, especially on a damp day, is super important. Now, some bouldering pads have a built-in mat, but you can always use a bar mat or a tea towel even to dry off your feet before touching the rock. This protects the rock and means your feet don't pop off at an unexpected moment. Chalk is essential. Liquid chalk is applied from a tube and provides a good base layer. You can top this up with normal chalk, and for bouldering, try keeping it in a boulder bucket chalk bag, like this one from Sowil. It allows you to get two hands in, and you can carry a lot of chalk in it, as well as pockets for brushes and tape. Outside bouldering can be tough on the fingers, and if you've got an existing injury, consider taping it up. It's good practice anyway, and means that you can climb for longer. Brushes are used to clean holes from dirt and chalk. We have a whole selection at the EpicTV shop with a range of different head sizes, so pick the one that you like and suits your bouldering style. Climbing shoes are obviously a necessity. Today, Teresa and I have bought our current climbing shoe models. For me, it's the boosters, which are soft and downturned, while Teresa has a tacky women's, which are a bit stiffer with less of a downturn. You can of course use your indoor climbing shoes outside, but sometimes it's nice to have a dedicated outdoor model. If you're going to be mainly bouldering, then perhaps a pair of downturn shoes are best for those steeper or overhanging routes. Okay, so that's the kit you're going to have. Now let's talk about a few tips. And I wanted to begin with a grading discussion. Outdoor grades work in the same way as indoor grades do, a number system depending on where you live or what your gym uses. However, be aware that outside climbing grades can be a bit stiffer than indoor ones. Indoor grades tend to be, and I say tend to be because it really depends, but they're often a bit softer and certainly more consistent. Whereas outside you might jump on a 6A and you can crush 6As indoors, but that grade is for some reason tricky. It's someone's point of view at the end of the day, and it might not suit your bouldering style. So don't think you can necessarily just go straight outside and climb the same indoor grades that you can on an actual real boulder. So how do you work out these grades? Well, indoors they're often written on the wall on a piece of paper, but outside there isn't really that system. Occasionally there's marks on the rock, but you need to know what those marks on the rock mean. So you need a guidebook. The problem is guidebooks tend to be specific for an area, but check out the 27 Crags app, and we sell this on the EpicTV shop. For around €45 a year, you get access to over 200 guidebooks worth of routes and areas, and it has an interactive map selection thing built in with it as well. Now this is very good value when you consider an individual guidebook for one area can cost at least €35. So if you don't know exactly where you're going to be climbing, consider getting the app to give yourself more of a range and variety. Of course, it's important to warm up properly when you're climbing, and there's a few ways you can do this. You can warm up off the rock, so perhaps using bands or some jumping exercises, anything to get the blood flowing into your body. Then you can get on the rock and try a warm-up route. But remember, those grades are harder outside, so really step down your grade for that initial warm-up climb. Okay, let's talk about safety and spotting. I wouldn't recommend that you go out climbing by yourself, especially at the beginning. Climbing is dangerous, it involves falling, and having someone to watch your back is very important. A spotter's job is to protect the climber and literally spot them when they fall down. Now you should arrange your pads nicely over the ground so they cover up all the uneven bits. Something like tree stumps, logs, dips in the ground, they can all be very dangerous if you land on them. So take some time preparing the ground first. Now, a spotter's job isn't to heroically catch the climber out in the air. Their job is to direct the climber onto the safest and softest part of that bouldering pad. So please don't step in and try to grab them in midair. That's going to cause you an injury as well as probably them. Occasionally you have to be reactive with the pads. Let's say that the climb traverses to the right or left. You might have to slightly adjust the pads to make sure your climber is protected throughout the climb. This is always a bit of a dangerous moment, so make sure you're looking up whilst adjusting those pads so you don't get landed on. For the spotter, you don't want to be standing directly underneath the climber. Make sure you have a nice wide stance with your arms out, slightly bent at the elbows, and it's important to keep your thumb tucked out of the way and not in the way of your palm for when the climber hits it. Okay, let's talk about the marks left on the rock by chalk. Now, as climbers, we use chalk to improve the friction and the grip between your hand and the surface of the rock. But big bits of chalk all over the place can look a bit ugly and ruin the aesthetics of an area. So as general rule, make sure you do use chalk, but make sure you clean it up after you. Leave that bouldering area as you'd like to find it. The other thing you might notice is something called tick marks, lines on the rock. Now there is a whole debate on whether you should use tick marks anyway, but let's say you're going to, here's how to use them properly. Tick marks are for when you can't quite see a hold. So let's say you're underneath a section of rock, the hold is on top of it and you can't reach around to spot that hold before you make the move. You can draw a little line of chalk to show you where the hold is when you're coming up from underneath it. Using a chunky chalk like Friction Labs Gorilla Grip is a good option because it has nuggets of chalk that you can use to draw a nice, clean, simple line. But here's the important bit. Always remove your tick marks when you leave an area. It preserves the natural beauty of that area, and other climbers might come along and not want to know the beta or be given extra little tips. So taking away those tick marks means you don't ruin it for the next climber coming along. Let's talk about body movement. Now when you're inside, it can be more obvious to work out how to use a climbing hold. They're coloured and they're shaped in a certain way. Outside, everything could be a handhold or a foothold, and it really makes a difference to your body position on how you use those. So for example, on this side pull arete, the move is far simpler when you shift your body weight to the left to move forwards. If you're going more direct, so body weight centered underneath the hold, you can see I have to cut loose and swing around more. Way more difficult. But when I adjust my weight to the left-hand side, put those feet in the right place, the move is far easier. I'm not dynamic, I'm not swinging around, and I lose less energy. The same kind of principles apply when you're talking about footwork. For example, if you're standing on a bad smear, you want your body weight to be centered in your foot so as much rubber as possible is laid down on the rock. If you shift your body weight to the left or right, you can turn the shoe onto the edge and quickly pop off. Think about your body position when climbing outside, and it will translate to indoor climbing as well. It's useful to watch other climbers climb to see how they do it and learn from them. So there you go, a few little tips and gear selection choices for people starting into the world of outside bouldering. Now, we were very careful with all the corona and social distancing rules during this shoot, and make sure you're following your country's regulations when climbing outside. If you like the look of any of the gear we've talked about today, there are links down below so you can pick it up. And please let me know if you found this useful and you ventured outside for the first time. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.